I'm a lady. Hello. Welcome to Cat on a Bike. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about hybrid bikes. Why they're great for commuting depending on where you live. And we're doing this inside because, old man went and decided to kick me in the nuts one final time. And I need to get this out. So, here it is. Here is the official bike of the channel. It's a Trek Dual Sport. It is a hybrid, as appropriate for this particular video. 3x8 drivetrain, hardtail, disc brakes front and rear. It's quite an upgrade from the Schwinn. So, what makes a hybrid, first of all? Well, it is somewhat comparable to a gravel bike, but it retains a little bit more narrow tires, kind of, not really. I guess the tires width can be comparable to a hybrid or to a gravel bike. It is within the same range, maybe not quite as wide as some gravel bikes can get. But that's made up for by the suspension on the fork. Now, sometimes not all hybrids will have fork suspension, but most, at least as far as in the United States especially, are hardtails, which means rigid rear end and a fork suspension. So that kind of makes up for not having as fat as tires as say, a gravel bike might have. Although they do comment down below, do gravel bike tires ever get as fat as modern mountain bike tires? I don't know. They're mostly comparable to the hybrid, which is what we're talking about today. So, gravel bike is probably a bit more closer to a road bike than a mountain bike, whereas a hybrid is a bit more of a mountain bike, and retains a little bit more of a mountain bike DNA, if you will. So, and what this gives you as a commuter, again, this really depends on where you live, what kind of terrain you ride on, how you ride, and so on and so forth. But the advantages of a hardtail, and you've got the aforementioned advantages of a mountain bike, which means a pretty good climbing gears. And in this case, it's a 3x drivetrain, so you got even more range there. While maintaining a fairly thick, meaty chain. Whereas if you're going with a 1x drivetrain, their cogs are closer together on the sprog on the cassette, so those tend to need a thinner chain, which is a little bit weaker. They wear out quicker, whereas 7-speed or 8-speed chains they're spaced out a bit more, makes them thicker, meaty, yes, which makes them a bit more reliable. They last longer, which is fantastic for a commuter. Of course, also borrowing from the mountain bike lineage, is the front fork suspension. which will let you survive hitting things that you would not want to hit on a rigid frame, like roots and potholes. Not that you'd want to hit a pothole, and yet probably want to avoid hitting them intentionally. But yeah, sometimes a good hard bump is just inevitable, and especially if you're riding on gravel, rutted dirt, or washboard roads. That suspension is going to help keep it not only smooth it out a bit, but it will help you maintain control. Plus, something that you should definitely look for is this switch right here. This is a lockout switch. Locks out the compression. So the fork behaves more like a rigid. Flip that over. No compression. So you're not losing energy on when you're climbing hills. And when you get over the hill, flip that lever on the fly. Don't even have to slow down. And you've got full suspension travel to handle anything and help you keep control as you come flying down that hill. Of course, hybrid bikes will not have the same suspension travel as a fully fledged mountain bike, because you're not hitting huge drops. You're not going through rock gardens. You're not going to take this on. You're not necessarily going to take this to a Whistler bike park and ride it down the A line. It's not really meant for hardcore mountain bike trails, but it has enough travel for anything you're going to see on a road, on a gravel road, on a fire road, or even on a green trail. So it really is a jack of all trades, master of none. And what one of the defining features of a hybrid are these handlebars. These are, aside from my little extension that I've added, they are significantly shorter than the average mountain bike handlebar, which gives you a little more maneuverability and a little bit more a little more aerodynamic riding position. Instead of being like this, you're more like this. And also, you can squeeze it through tighter spaces. It'll fit through any doorway. So it's not as comfortable as a city bike or cruiser bike or anything specifically made for commuting, where the handlebars are more swept back and longer and taller. That would give you a more upright riding position. That's a lot more comfortable for long duration commuting. Not necessarily for speed. And the hybrid, you're leaned forward, but not as leaned forward as you would be on a road bike. Another sort of right Goldilocks zone sort of configuration. Moving on back. And there's not a whole lot of room for me to point back here, so you'll just have to take my word for it. There are mounting points for fenders, for a rack, for pannier rack, and several different mounting points on the frame itself. Thanks to that hardtail configuration. and this somewhat longer wheelbase. And so you've got plenty of room to put your stuff, which is an absolute essential thing to have on a commuter, as you don't want to have mud splashing up all over your jeans when you're dressed for the destination rather than for sport, which is how you want to dress on a commute. And you got a place to put your stuff. My battery's dying. 1 second. Pesky bugger, get the charge up. Alright, where was I? Ah, yes. So you got a place for your shit on the rack that you could put on this, and the various other places you can stick frame bag or a toolkit or bottle cages or whatever you can fit on a frame, and which is one of the big advantages of a hardtail bike, and especially on a hybrid and mounting points for the fender, because if you're commuting, you need to be able to ride it in basically any riding condition, so long as it's not too insane. I wouldn't want to ride in a tornado or a hurricane, or when it's just like auto ratio, or when it's like 29 below. Although people have been known to do that, especially in northern climates. They do it all the time. It's not that weird of a thing to do, but I wouldn't recommend it because I hate the cold. All that aside, yes, fenders. Fenders are a nice thing to have when you're using your bike to commute. Because when you commute, you dress for the destination, not the ride. You're not going for speed, you're going for comfort. And you don't want the puddles, rainwater, dirt, dust. You don't want to be kicking that up on your slacks if you're wearing slacks. And you don't want that rooster tail give you a nice stripe up your back. That's kind of messy. So being able to mount fenders is a big advantage. But yeah, like I said, racks are great. It's great to have a place to put your shit. The downside, at least to the style of hybrid, is there's not a lot of mounting points on the fork for cargo. If you're a sort of person who likes to mount like a stuff on the fork, like you would be able to on a typical gravel bike, you're not gonna have room for it here because you've got shocks in the way. Although you still have the mounting points for a regular fender. And the narrower cockpit doesn't leave you a lot of room for mounting baskets. And you can kind of do what I did here, put a handlebar extension on there so you can have room for to hang a handlebar bag and still be able to access it on the outside of the cables. Because there are a lot of cables running out of the cockpit here. Cockpit, of course, is just like your interface with the bike, basically. It's just what it's called. What that sort of. It is a little heavier than a purpose-built commuter. Well, actually, no. For a commuter, steel frames are still pretty common because the way they ride, their durability, reliable. They're stiffer. They're more reliable. So for a commuter, a steel frame bike, because you're not going for speed or anything, you're just going for comfort, and steel frames are very comfortable to ride. Steel frames, although they're heavier, are very common for commuters. And they would actually work very well as commuters. And they've been used for commuters for forever. So yeah, aluminum frames are actually less common. And you really don't see carbon frames on commuter bikes. So that's something to think about. Aside from that, extra suspension hardware adds a bit more weight. If that's something that matters, then yeah, consider that. Hybrid bikes, especially one like this one, they're very customizable. So you can easily swap out a lot of these components for like anything else. Like a suspension seat post is a very common feature. You can, and a lot of hybrids do come with suspension seat post. The old Trent I had one, which is really nice to have when you're riding the hardtail. Makes it real comfy. And of course, those can be suspension posts can be put on pretty much any bike. So that's not a defining feature, but a very good upgrade. I'll probably put one on this at some point. But yeah, very customizable. You can swap out the threadless stem. That means you can swap out the bars for pretty much any style of bar. So if you wanted to, you could put ape hangers on it. If you wanted to, don't know why you would, but you can. Oh, you can put cruiser bars on it. So you can basically turn this into a city bike with that wanted to be a mountain bike when it grew up, but life had other plans for it. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. So there you have it. So who is a hybrid bike for as a commuter? And we're talking about commuting here, so yeah, it is not as capable as a full-fledged mountain bike. So don't expect to be taking it to Whistler Bike Park and having a good time with it, because it's not built for that. If you live in a say a small town, there's a helicopter flying over. I don't know if you can hear that. Here it comes. Helicopter. Or was it a plane? Probably a helicopter. Yeah. Anyway, right. What was I lost my train of thought. Thanks, helicopter. People dying all the time, needing a life flight. Yeah. Where was I? So who is this bike for? Who is a hybrid for? So if you live in a small town, where there's a lot of gravel, or maybe you live out sort of outside of the city limits, or in a rural community, maybe you have some gravel roads on your commute, some level B maintenance roads, dirt roads. Maybe you have a lot of roads that are not well maintained, a lot of potholes or other stuff. Then maybe you've got a lot of hills to climb. Then, yeah, a hybrid might be a perfect bike for your commute. Otherwise, if you live in the city, you don't ride on dirt or gravel. If you probably never will ride on dirt or gravel, then yeah, probably go. And if you're not dealing with a lot of really big hills, maybe just a regular city bike might be a better city bike, or a cruiser might be a better option. Or maybe if you live on a out sort of in the rural area and there's a lot of gravel, but it's not too rough, and a gravel bike, but maybe not with drop bars. I don't think I would be comfortable with drop bars, but it's all a matter of it's all subjective. So, you do you. Ride whatever makes you comfortable, whatever you're comfortable with. Try out different styles of bike. Me, I kind of come from. I like to ride nature trails every now and then. So if you do ride nature trails, not necessarily mountain bike trails, but nature trails that are sort of hiking trails that also allow bikes, then a hybrid is almost perfect for that sort of riding. So long as you're not dealing with too much mud, then it is a perfect match for that sort of riding. And yeah, that's actually something that I like to do a lot, is going out into the local state park and riding the nature trails. So if that's you, hybrid is the way to go. I wrote an article not too long ago. I will link that in the description if I remember to do that. Watch me forget completely. So you're going to see a lot more of this bike. It is now the official bike of the channel. And we're going to be doing some upgrades to it. We're going to get fenders on it. And we're going to get a rack, some panniers, and I'll probably get a suspension post at some point. Maybe change the handlebars. I'm not sure about that. It's a thought in my mind. But yeah, we're going to be keeping the thing up. We're going to do basic maintenance. And we're going to have a lot of fun with it. So, look out for future videos with this bike, which maybe I'll come up with a name for it, maybe not. I don't know. If you know any good names for a bicycle like this, project names, drop it in the description. And I'll do a full review of this bike in its current state. Sometime soon, perhaps. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next whatever this is.